Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. You're here with two life coaches, and we are talking about inner work and your inner life. We talk about our work and our inner life too, don't we, Laurel?
We sure do. And I love having this safe space to talk about my own inner work.
I do too. And also to talk fairly openly and freely about it because oftentimes that's a level of discomfort for people. So that's part of what our mission is too, is to make it more normal and more comfortable, and that this is how it can be done in a safe way, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, everybody out there that Laurel and I are steeped in years of inner work. So we're not new at this. We're both life coaches. We've been coaching people for many years now. And this is our jam. This is our jam, isn't it, Laurel?
It is. But even though we are steeped in it,
Hmm.
every day, every week, every month, I know the universe delivers to me, for me, another opportunity to practice my own inner work.
Yes, and to deepen it if you want to, right? And again, this is optional. This is all optional. Some people opt out, and that aggravates other people sometimes when they're doing their inner work. So I think one of the things that we want to acknowledge is that everybody has their own pace of doing inner work. They have their own interest in doing it. They have their own capacity to go deep or not, and to be allowing of that and accepting of that is really an important part of the work. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I find too, now that you've mentioned that,
Mm.
being accepting of inner work, my own inner work, not being linear,
Yeah.
right? It is not like, you graduate from middle school and you're on to high school, and then you graduate from high school and you're
Mhm.
on to college. That is not what inner work is like.
Right.
And for me, understanding that and giving permission, sometimes I might be taking a step back in my inner work. Sometimes I feel like my inner work isn't paying off or getting me, forward.
Mhm.
But it really is, all of it is important to accept that not only do other people have their own pace, that our pace sometimes is not expected or surprising, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that if we try to force it, oftentimes that's when um it kind of it gets away from us almost. So to go at a pace where it feels like you're doing some work and integrating and I think forgiveness work is some of the best example of that because sometimes we're not ready for all the deep levels of forgiveness that sometimes need to be done and to allow ourselves to go at a pace that's true and honest within us rather than forcing something and not really being being thorough and honest with
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah, it's so
yeah,
important. Which I think is related to our topic today, don't you?
I do.
Laurel, this name of this our topic today just keeps escaping me. And maybe we need to talk about that as an example today. We'll see. We'll see. But so
Okay,
I'm going to let you say the title.
sure. Our title today is Why Alignment is Harder Than It Sounds.
Oh, there it is. Why alignment is harder than it sounds. So, I guess some part of me acknowledges that. And even just saying the title was harder for me to remember than it seems like it should be, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is harder than it seems.
It is harder than it seems. And so I feel like one of the ways we could approach the show that I think might be useful is to talk about some examples of um, you know, how you can recognize that you're out of alignment and then maybe deconstructing a little bit an example to show how you identify maybe where your misalignment is because I do think that that's one of the things. Align. It sounds so. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I'm aligned. I'm aligned, but I have found that when I'm truly aligned, thoroughly within, then my life feels like it's in flow. And if I come up against a block or a barrier or whatever, I can look at it really with clear eyes and reevaluate and see what's going on. And and I think if you're aligned, you can see what's going on more easily.
It's
Yeah.
so interesting because thinking about that flow and ease, when I think about the word, of being in alignment or living in alignment, that really is what I'm seeking. I'm seeking for life to be in flow, and have ease to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for some reason, I think about ease, and the correlation or the relationship to easy. And that's why this title speaks
Yeah.
so much to me because it's not only recognizing when you're in alignment or not in alignment, but recognizing the amount of work that, work,
Mm.
with quotation marks, air quotes here, the amount of work that living in alignment takes.
Yeah. So let's talk about what it often feels like when we're not living in alignment. And it's really the opposite of that ease and flow. It feels like you're always coming up against blocks, against barriers. Nothing seems easy to you. Nothing seems like it comes naturally. Um, there seems to be a lot of resistance internally or from the outside coming in, resistance and what you want. Those are all some of the signs, don't you think, Laurel?
I do. And
Yeah.
the other things that I think are signs is when force is required
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or when you feel like there's a bit of being in control needed, right? And so those two things, I mean, when I think about resistance and force and control and
Yeah.
maybe being stuck,
Yeah.
right? That energy of not ease, and are those good indicators that you're not in alignment?
Yeah. So what are we trying to align? We're trying to align internally all the systems that bring us into some behavior pattern and some experience of life, right? So the systems inside are, I mean, one of the ways that we can look at it is this spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, right? That's one
Yes,
kind of process, and we can talk about that. The other one I always think about too is values and beliefs in alignment with your behavior and your plan and your goal, so to speak. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's interesting because I think I start there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The values and beliefs and purpose, right? Because if I am living in alignment with my values, the answer, my yes, my moving forward should come with ease,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if it's my beliefs and my values and my purpose, when I am trying to move forward and I'm not in alignment with those things, that's where I think often for me the energy of resistance comes up.
Yeah. And or it feels like it's blocked, blocked, blocked.
Yes.
You feel like I can't get there. I can't get there. And so that's when it requires a deeper dive into, well, what's really going on inside you, you know? And is this
Yeah.
truly what you want? And if it is what you want, and you start looking at the steps towards taking it, then what are the steps you don't want to take or you're not taking to really get to where you want to go and have what you want to have, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
that starts to flesh out those beliefs and values that are maybe not in alignment.
it really does. It as you're speaking about that, I was immediately brought back to, last year when I wanted to move. I mean, we know this story. Many of our listeners have heard this story. I wanted to move out of the house that my husband and I lived in since 2009. I wanted to move and I felt really stuck in
Yeah.
that house. And last year, in the process of finding a house that I really loved, going through the process of, reaching an agreement with my husband to buy that house or make an offer on that house. The process that I had to go through to get what I wanted was really hard. It was being honest with myself,
Mhm.
stopping an old behavior or belief that I was the one to make other people happy, right? So I had to really get clear on what was the block and was I willing to live in alignment with not just what I said I wanted, but who I had to be, how I needed to act in
Yeah.
order to get what I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not that you were acting, you were really coming into more honesty with who you are, the woman that wanted that thing, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
and who you are in your heart, like getting rid of some of the conditioning around
yes.
thinking you're supposed to make everybody else happy first. Yeah.
And years of pattern or
Yeah.
behavior where
Yeah.
I did put everybody else first. And so that's where, perhaps the years, the decades of putting everybody else first was not in alignment with my core being.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
Because it
And
feels really good not to do that anymore.
yeah, that's great. That's great. I think as mom and as wife and as worker, employee, whatever, uh, we hear so many messages and have heard, particularly generationally. You know, my daughter and I were talking about this when we were on a long drive yesterday in the car. And it was this idea. I said, in my heart, I'm a feminist. And I started to talk about, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, that's interesting. And she said, yeah, I see that, Mom. And she said, well, I don't think I really am a feminist. And she said, but I think you're a feminist because of the time you grew up and what was happening for women. I said, you're right. I do think that that's a result. My dedication to expressing that part of myself comes from a time when a woman couldn't get a credit card, right, at the bank.
Right,
Right. I lived at that time. So we know what it's like to not have opportunities because you're a woman. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And so this whole idea of alignment is really finding out internally who am I? Who am I in the core of me? And how can I release my conditioning so that I feel like I'm free to behave the way I want to behave so that I can go towards what I really want?
Yes. And as we talk about being free of conditioning, it really is how we respond and react to opportunities or choices that we have day in day out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so we not only have to be clear about what we want, who we are, what we need,
Yeah.
we have to really be clear and intentional, deliberate about what we need to change in order to be living more in alignment.
Yes. So I'm going to continue with my feminist example because
Okay,
it's coming in kind of strongly for me that we can use some pieces of this for people as an example, right?
great.
So I do think of myself as a feminist, but I also have, because I feel really strongly about all people and that we're all individuals and we all matter. I have in my life done a lot of work around um, being a feminist, but not a male hating or male bashing feminist. I'm just as much in favor of the masculine as I am in the feminine. It's just the feminine has been oppressed for so long, both in males and in females, that my tendency is to be in support of speaking into what is the problem with oppressing or keep, tamping down the feminist aspects that in our culture still aren't necessarily acceptable or valued to
Yes.
in their full extent, right? And so that was a lot of work on my part, right? To number one, uh cure my own self of my own feeling like men failed me in my life, right? So
Okay.
that I wasn't broadly saying men are a problem, right? I had to do my own inner work around maybe the men in my life disappointed me so much that I could start to believe that what's wrong with men? Right. I remember saying that to my therapist. What's wrong with men? Why can't they grow up? Why can't they be more adult? And so there was a lot of work around this. Yeah. And I had to challenge my beliefs that were starting to form around men being a problem, right? And instead, my work and around this idea of being a feminist was, recognizing that men were wounded just like women were by the patriarchy, right? And
Yes.
so if we started to suddenly live in a matriarchy where all the women and the feminine things were all valued and all the masculine things were devalued, we'd just be going in the opposite direction, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so bringing that to alignment, right? How,
Mhm.
like, when do you think, or can you give kind of how did it play out when you brought that more into alignment with who you are?
Yeah, so it became uh um when this was also synchronistic to a certain extent, right? Is finding places where well, number one, I did my study in women's groups when I did my master's degree, my thesis. And so I learned a lot about feminism then and women using their voices. And then the consciousness raising groups that I was involved in was a lot about really honoring the totality of each person and not just about feminine. So being able to
Yes,
put pieces of the puzzle together, right, along the way and really align myself inside with I can speak as a feminist, but I'm not speaking as I'm promoting all the feminine over the masculine.
right,
Yeah. I'm just
right.
like, no, we have some work to do to bring it up so that we can be more in alignment
Yes,
with the masculine and the feminine. Yeah.
that is a great example. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So, what
So,
next for
so
us?
what I feel like oftentimes, and Laurel, let's talk this a little bit about this with client work, right? So a
Sure.
lot of times with client work, what happens is people get stuck and they can't seem to get beyond a certain place, right? And so we might even be able to flush out that they have low self-esteem, let's say, okay, that their belief in themselves is that they're not as valuable as, so let's say, we see them as, or we know that their contribution is really good, but they devalue it, right?
Yes.
Um, so this is like a common issue, oftentimes with clients in various ways, right, in their life. And so what happens is if that's a belief that's in their subconscious, maybe they can see some of it, maybe they can't see all of it, how deep it is or whatever. What happens is there's often I just can't seem to get what I want, right? I keep running up against this, or something's wrong with me, or life seems to be working against me, right? Those kind of phrases are all indicators of, well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Is that really what you believe? Life is working against you? So we start to deconstruct, right? What are some of the things coming out of our mouths so that we can look at it's demonstrating, right? Our speech and our behavior is demonstrating something that we believe. And if we don't value ourselves and we don't believe we're of value, we often can't rise into the thing that seems valuable to
That's
us.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And so recognizing that disconnect is the opportunity, I think, to bring that back into alignment, right?
Yeah. Right. And to
So,
do the healing work around
yes,
not believing you're valuable, right?
right.
So suddenly, I mean, that's not a hard thing to do to go from saying and really truly believing I'm not very valuable. That's what I was told over and over again, or I'm in the way, or I'm a burden, or whatever the story was, to I'm worthy. I'm worthy just by being alive, and I'm worthy of all that I want.
Yes.
That's,
And those that's a hard disconnect sometimes to close, right?
yeah.
Because it we back to conditioning, right? The conditioning often influences our beliefs,
Hmm.
right? And so getting into that place where you know there's a disconnect, there's a misalignment,
Yeah.
and then being able to really go into and do the work, why is that my belief,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? What have I been told that led me to believe that? What have I demonstrated myself that might be contrary to that?
Yeah. Yeah. Or why do I decide? So sometimes our block story where we can't get what we want is almost like we use it as a reinforcement that something's wrong with me or I'm not worth it, right?
Right?
Where
Yes.
the opposite process has to take place. Like you change your belief about how you feel about yourself,
Yes.
whether you feel valuable as a person. And then the other things begin to start to change in response to that.
Yeah.
But until that really is changed, and I feel like some people just can't get that. And a belief is very thorough, let's say, in terms its work inside us. So if you don't think you're valuable, it's going to affect
Everything.
everything.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting because what's coming up for me as you're talking about this is, oftentimes when we have a disconnect, a misalignment, in our values, right? And so tying into the beliefs, right? I mean, my own corporate career story, for many years, I believed that I needed to stay there, to work there, because I needed the money, because the salary was important to me, right? And that was true. I'm not going to say that that was not true.
Yeah.
But when I could hold on to that and still see reasons or indications, signs that I was not I was not serving myself well by holding on so tight to that that salary, that job,
Hmm.
and really being able to get to the place where I could process salary aside, you know, is this a company that I want to continue working for?
Yeah.
Is the what's being asked of me in alignment with how I want to live my life?
Mhm.
You know, are my values aligned with the company values? Now,
Yeah.
those are really hard things to get clear about, right? To even begin to look at.
Yeah. I mean, it's a process. It's definitely a process, right?
Yes.
And in the process, it's again, so there's so much self-honesty here, and getting beyond the conditioning. Look, in the America that we still live in today, success is still equated to often money, how much money
Yes.
you make.
Yes.
And I do see some signs of that changing in the next generation after us,
Hmm.
and I'm sure it will for the following one too. But that doesn't mean that's true for everybody. And it also is very individual work that you have to be able to like come to terms with. I would rather be fulfilled creatively than I would rather make a huge amount of money, or I'd rather this than that, right? And that comes through identifying your values. What's more important to you? If money is the most important thing to you, then go for it, and maybe you can set aside, the soul sucking experience that you might be in. I don't know. It depends. Everybody's different, right?
Yes. Yes. And
Yeah.
everybody doesn't have a soul-sucking experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I do think that, you know, for me, my desire to live in alignment with my values, my purpose, my beliefs really does force me to take a hard look at things. And
Mhm.
it becomes almost a filter, right?
Yeah.
And this is where going back to the ease, this is where the ease comes in. If
Mhm.
living in alignment with your values, beliefs, wants, desires, if you're living in alignment and you have this filter that pushes you, I don't want to say pushes in a forceful way, but brings you to an easier yes, you do have the ease
Yeah.
that your life feels better
Yeah.
because you are in alignment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
process, that saying about, um, you know, I forgot what it is already, how it's said, but watching how the sausage is made, right?
Mhm.
Like the
Mhm.
process is always messy. The process is not easy.
Yeah.
Coming to the other side with a life that is in alignment is where we can indulge and experience ease.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say, as we start this values work, or if you're just beginning your values work, it's so important to, really maybe pick your top 10 values and then do that rigorous inventory of, is my work in alignment with these values? Is my home life in alignment with these values? Are my personal relationships? Is the way I treat myself? Is the way I show up? Am I really showing up and demonstrating all of these qualities clearly? This is how we get into alignment. This is the work of getting into alignment, I think.
I do too. I agree with
Yeah.
you. Do
Yeah.
you have an example of maybe when you have used your values as a filter?
Uh, I think I think one of the things I think I've talked about this before, but probably been a long time since I talked about it, was I remember thinking I was raised to be a nice girl, right?
Yes.
I was raised to treat people nicely, to be a thoughtful, kind, all the things, right? And and yet when I really started to look at the value or the quality of nice, I didn't even really understand what it meant. Like, what is nice? I would have to look it up in the dictionary right now to actually get the exact definition because I can't give you one. But what it made me realize was I really want to be kind. I want to be thoughtful. I want to be respectful of people. Like, it made me be much more specific about what I wanted to be. And then the nice girl thing kind of got fallen by the wayside. That started to identify as my people pleasing activity, my conflict avoidance. Oh, I'm just a nice person, so I'm not going to get mad. I'm just a nice person, so I'm just going to do what everybody really wants me to do, right? And so I really worked at not being nice and instead aligned with I can be kind, but I can also be no, that's not for me, right? No, no, thank you. That's not for me. And say it kindly and
Yes.
respectfully. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I think that's part of is that a good example?
I love that
Okay,
example. I
okay,
think
good.
that's a great example because it takes it, from something that's abstract,
Yeah.
like nice,
Hmm.
right, to much more specific that you can be respectful and thoughtful and discerning,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And use that as a filter to live in alignment with who you really are and who you want to be.
Yeah. I think, the other thing I think is a good way for people to flush out some of their beliefs to examine them to see if they really are a belief that they hold or whether it's a conditioned belief in them is when you're being judgmental.
Yes.
Because when you're being judgmental, what you're doing is saying, I believe this about something,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? And if you really work hard at deconstructing that, like just take this phrase, whatever the phrase is, oh, they're just a bunch of idiots. Well, wait a minute, hold on. You know, who are you talking about? What does it mean to be an idiot? What are you really saying? And do you really believe that in your deepest heart of hearts, right?
Yeah. Is it true?
Yeah, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
a really worthwhile exercise because it challenges us to get in touch with all the parts of ourselves and not just the one thing that we are looking out there and we don't like or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I use this filter, if you will, in a decision not that long ago when I was asked to be on the board of New England Women in Energy and the Environment. And I was really, pleased, flattered, you know, that I was asked to join this board. But I really had to stop and look at, am I doing this because it fills or it's in alignment with my values, which, I had worked for a while to narrow down my three top values, which is hard. I'm not going to suggest you need to do three because three eliminates a lot of others,
yeah.
right? We can value a lot of things. But when I did this exercise to come up with three in my business and personal, my three are connection, community, and contribution.
Mm,
And so I had to put the ego aside and let go of being flattered that
yeah.
I was good enough and they liked me enough and all the things to join this board and really, look at, was it going to fulfill my values? And those values are how I wanted to live. I wanted, good connection, genuine connection, authentic connection, um, heartfelt connection.
Mm,
I wanted a community. I want to live in community in all the places, in individual relationships in my family, in my community, in the world. And I want to contribute, right? And so I really did have to look at it like, is this choice, is this decision, is this offer that I'm being given, does it match who I say I want to be or who I say I am
yeah,
and how I want to live my life?
yeah. And the interesting part of that, Laurel, too, is, and I want to say this because I feel like I don't want to lose this, is over time, our top values can shift around, right?
Absolutely.
And so you could come 2 years from now, still being on that board and realize, this is not doing it for me anymore. I have other values that are more important now, right?
Yes, yes. And I'm
Yeah,
glad you mentioned that because I think that's a big part of living in alignment is
yeah,
being able to recognize what no longer serves you, what you have outgrown, maybe what has outgrown you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What transition in your life have you gone through that has rearranged priorities and thus rearranged your higher values, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Well, can you give us the title again, Laurel?
Yes, I'm looking at a piece of paper here, but yes, it is right
Thank you.
here. It is why alignment is harder than it sounds.
Yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head, or we
I
at
do
least
too. I
tapped
do
a bunch of
too.
taps on that nail.
I do. I think we've covered a lot. It is hard. It's not always ease and
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if you're walking away from our conversation, you're like, oh, where do I start? What do I do? Right? Is really beginning to look at your behaviors, looking at your choices, looking at taking inventory of your life, getting your values list together, and starting to really, when you feel conflicted about things, or if you're stuck and you're not getting somewhere, start to search for the underlying belief that's holding you where you are rather than allowing you to get forward to where you want to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we can list those steps, if you will, in the
Mm,
show notes so that, our listeners can begin their own journey in
yeah.
exploring what alignment looks like for them.
Yeah, yeah, and to feel successful, hopefully,
Yeah.
in time with feeling like I'm really aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it feels really good.
It
Being in
does.
alignment, I know it feels very good.
It
Yeah.
does, but do not be a perfectionist living in alignment
No,
because
no,
it's
no,
always
no.
changing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always fun to step outside yourself and experiment and experience other things to see what feels good and how you might be changing and might not even be aware of it, something speaking to you. So always the play and the curiosity and the experimentations is fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that because it is true that our becoming goes through multiple changes over a lifetime, and
Mm,
living in alignment is ever changing.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Laurel, another good conversation.
Thanks, Laurel. We'll be back for more.
Next week, we will talk more about alignment.
Good.
All
Thank you,
right.
Laurel. All right, off we
Bye-bye.
go. Bye for
Bye
now,
for now.
everybody.